Boker Tov, today's daf is Daf Mem Gimel and Gitin, as we learned for Forshlam, Philosopher, and Ruma, and Yosef Field Ben Chanichal. Yesterday, at the end of the page, we had the following question was raised: can an Eved be sold for his future value in case he is gored? If he's gored, an Eved Kanani, if he's gored and killed, so the halacha is you have to pay 30 shekels to the owner. Okay, can he be sold just for that? Is he considered sold? If it be sold, he'll get that. That's like it might happen, it may not happen. Is he sold at least for that, or is he not sold? And he still really is owned by the person. So we said the conscience, both according to the one, the Rav Shapiro rules that you can be makda b'shovel olam, because that's at least because you makda, let's say the fruits are going to a tree. The tree is here. It's probably going to come. But how do you know that the Eved is going to be gored to death by an ox or something? Right? Who knows that's going to happen? And even if he is gored, how do you know that the owner of the ox will have to pay? Maybe he'll be moda, and moda b'kanasas patra doesn't have to pay. And we asked the kasha according to the other shita, the Rabbanan who say that what you cannot transfer something which is not here yet, not in the world. That's probably by payers of a tree, because they're not here right now. But over here, the Evet's here, the ox is here. Maybe you could. So we couldn't. That was the question that was raised. We're at the fifth line on Mem Gimel B'Alf Tashma. Let's try to come in here. We'll come to bring a proof from here. Pasuk says, "V'yilid beisa." Who can eat the Kohen's truma? Either somebody that he acquires, like a slave, man or a woman, or somebody born in his house. V'yilid beisa. Matam alone. What does it tell you? Im kinyan kesa. If it just says kinyan kesa ochal, v'yilid beisa lo koshke. Why does he have to tell you? You know, if the Kohen buys a slave, the slave can also eat truma. What are you talking about? Anybody born in his house, his children, they could eat. Why do you have to tell me that the children could also eat? If you say if Kenny Kaspo, if somebody that he acquires, if he buys a slave, the slave can eat truma. Certainly, his family should be able to eat truma. Maybe who can eat only somebody who's worth money, like a slave. If you bought money, you paid for money. You paid for him with money. He's worth money. Ochel avol afilid bayis also sheish bo sheva kesef ochel. Only if he's worth money, meaning he has some value to him, some objective value that he's worth something on the market. How do you know if he's not worth anything? How could a person not be worth anything? So we'll see. We'll give an example in a minute. Even if he's not worth anything. In other words, why did it have to say yilid bias? Because you might think if somebody that you acquired for money can eat truma, certainly bought at his house. Well, you might say if it would have just said Kenyan Kaspo, you would say just like Kenyan Kaspo, only if he's worth money, because you paid money for him. Obviously, he's worth money. But you live bias. Maybe you might think also only somebody who's worth money. How do you know even if he's not worth anything? Bias. Even though he's not worth anything, he also can eat truma. I can bias. Mikol makom. Vadayin ani omer. You live bias. Okay, you live bias. Ben sheish bo shavakas ben sheni vakasa. If he's born in the house, you're right. If he's a family member, let's say he's born Rahman, he's retarded, he's a vegetable, whatever. He can't do anything. Even if it's not worth anything, he can eat truma. Ocho. I would say so. So you live by his ben shavakas ben shavakasef. Ocho, he could eat. King kesef. Let's say somebody that he acquired with money. Maybe yeshbo kesef ochel, abayim bo shavakasef ein ochel. If he's not worth anything, maybe he can't eat truma. Talmud lomer kinyan kaspo v'yilid baisa. The pasuk says whether he acquired him or born in his house. My yilid bias af b'shem shokum, just like yilid bias. A family member, let's say a child, that's a perfect example. Af b'shem shokum, even not worth anything. Ochel af kinyan kaspo af b'shem shokum ochel. Now, okay, what does all this have to do with us? We're saying now that who could eat truma? Either the Kohen's children or somebody that he bought, whether they're worth money or not. If you say, what was our question? If an Eved that was sold simply for his future value in case he is gored to death. Now, is that a sale or not? If that would be the case, how can you have an Eved that's not sold, at least for his cost, meaning how can you have, you say a Kenyan Kaspo, somebody that he bought, meaning a slave, even it's not worth anything. What do you mean it's not worth anything? Can you have a slave that's not worth anything? Let's say he can't do any work, but you could sell him for his future value, so he's worth something. You're going to sell him his future value in case he's gored, that you're going to 30 shekels. I'll take a chance. I'll give you 2 shekels for that now. He's worth something. Can Can that be? In other words, the fact that you say that the kid have an Eved who's not worth anything, even though he's not worth anything, he could eat. What do you mean he's not worth anything? If you tell me that an Eved that can't work at all and he can't be sold for his future value, okay, he's not worth anything. You can have an Eved like that. He can still eat truma. But if you tell me that he could be sold for a knas, even though he can't do anything, he's simply sold in case he is gored. I'll give you some present value for that possible future value. He's telling him, is there an Eved that can't be sold for knas? And there is. Let's say the Eved is mortally wounded. He's considered dead. A treifa she'em mishamal of knas, the gavak tilu, Rashi says, he's like a dead person. So there is no knas for that. Neither is what is a knas? Knas is if an Eved was gored and killed by your ox or your animal, you've got to pay. But if he already was a treifa, give an example. If a man is a treifa, or a man's a treifa, that means he's mortally wounded. He's got some brain injury, or he's missing a leg over a certain part that can't be fixed. And obviously, today's medicine is different than it was then. But if he's mortally wounded, meaning he's going to die within the year for sure, and you shoot him to death now, you're not chayav for that because he's considered a dead man. Not a good idea. You shouldn't do that. I don't recommend it, but he's not going to kill. So an Eved treifa is not chayav, and if he's Eved treifa and gored to death, that's not, you're not chayav for that. So there is an Eved that can't be sold for knas because he's not going to get knas then if he's a treifa. But he could do something, even if he's a treifa and he's not considered that. That the answer is he's a disgusting, boiled like person. You can't even go near the guy. You can't do anything. So it is possible to have that, and therefore our question is not really decided. It is possible. Yes, the question is if you sell an Eved for his future value in case he's gored, can you sell him? Is it considered sold? We tried to prove it from the fact that it can't be, because if an Eved is sold, then how could it be possible to have an Eved that if he can be sold for that value, how is it possible to have somebody who's not worth anything? The answer is yeah. If he's a treifa and he's a mukashchen, all that together, not any more milas. No, that's enough. He's a treifa and he's a mukashchen. He's not worth anything. So it's possible that it could be so. We don't know. The Gemara does not post it. Go ahead, another question. Here we're going to get back to our question of chetzev v'chetzev mekar. We've discussed this many times. The Mishnah said, person who's half a slave, half a free man. How does that happen? When he two partners and one freed his. We had a shaila, if one person owned the whole slave and freed half of them, does that work? So we said basically it does work with money, but with a shtar, if he just gave him get shichur, according to the Rabbanan, that would not necessarily work. Okay, but let's say you have an Eved you have a person who's half an Eved, half ben chora. So what do we say? What's the Mishnah say? Well, what's he supposed to do now? You could split up his work, one day for himself, one day for you, the master. But what about who can he marry? So therefore, you force him to a slave. But let's say you didn't force the owner yet to free him, to give him his freedom. He got married, he got engaged, he got to a girl, he said, I have a Mekudeshes lead. Now, half of him is a free man. Is that marriage or not? Now, let's understand something. Let's go back to Kedushin for a second. If a man goes over to a woman and he said, listen carefully, listen here. He says, I want you to be married. I'd like half of me to marry you. I'd like you to be married to half of me. That's a good Kedushin. Yeah, even though, what does that mean? She's married to him. I want you to be married to half of me. It's a good Kedushin. Because what does he really mean? You can interpret his words as meaning what? I might take another wife. Half of me will go to her, half of me will go to you. Of course, it doesn't really mean half literally. But he's saying is that if I want you to marry half of me, that's a good Kedushin, because that's like saying he's really marrying her. His whole body's marrying her, right? His whole person's marrying her. But that lashon is not so bad, because he said, I want half of me to marry you. I want you to be married to half of me. I'm going to say half of me married. I want you to be married to half of me. That's okay. Because all he's really saying is, I might take another wife too. Okay, that's okay. But let's say he says, I want to be married to half of you. Not all of you. I mean, that doesn't work, because a woman can't be divided among more than one person. So that doesn't work. He has to marry the whole person. So that doesn't work. So now, what happens if he's at half an Eben, half an Chorin? Chatzi. He's a Chatzi. We'll call him a Chatzi. He's a Chatzi. And he marries a Bas Chorin. Now, is it a marriage or not? Are they married? Is it Kedushin? Im Tipslon Ben Yisrael, Shamar Bas Yisrael. If a man tells a Bas Yisrael, like I just told you, Skach the Chatzi, marry half of me, Mukudeshes. Why the Chazal Kulei? because the truth of it, why does it work? Because she can really marry all of him, right? He just said half of me, like maybe I'll take another wife too. But she could marry the whole person, so it works. But over here, she's not fit to marry the half of him that's a slave, right? A Jewish woman cannot marry a slave. She can't marry a slave. So here it's not right. But he said, he said basically, when he says Aret Mikdash, he really means the half of him who's a Ben Chorin. But over here, she's not fit to marry the other half of him, so maybe it wouldn't work. Maybe the other way around. Ben Yisrael Mekadosh Chatzi Isha, we said before, if a man marries a half a woman, a regular Jewish man marries half a Jewish woman, then it doesn't work, right? Because she's not fit to marry anybody else. The Shiur B'Kinyano, because he left something out of his acquisition. He limited his acquisition. He can't do that. He can't marry half a woman. A woman is totally married to you. So there it doesn't work. But over here, he didn't leave anything over. He didn't leave anything over because all of him, right? What happened? He was half and half, right? So half of him that was a Ben Chorin who was fit to marry her, he didn't leave anything out. He married him completely. In the case where he said, I'm marrying half of you, he left something out. He left her, where's her other half? But over here, all of him that could marry her married her. So that's the question. Does a chatzi, can he marry, and he marries a Jewish woman, does it work? Is there a kedushin? Tashma. Let's go back to our case. If an ox gored and killed a chatzi, we learned this yesterday. The knas, remember, he's half and half. So he gives half the knas. The knas is the 30 shekels. He gives half of that, the 15 shekels, he gives to the master because he's owned partially by the master. Chatzi kofer liyorship. And chatzi kofer, which is what? His real value on the market. He might be worth $10 million. He'd have to give $5 million to the heirs of this person. And remember, we said yesterday, what kind of heirs do we have? Now we'll deal with that. If you say over here that a chatzi who marries a Jewish woman is not a kedushin, Yorshin, how does he have Yorshin? How does he have Yorshin? If he was a full slave before, then he doesn't have any Yorshin. Those are not Jewish kids over here. We're not talking about, not chayiv to a non-Jewish person. It's the kofar is for a Jewish person. So it must be that it's a good kedushin. Here's what happened over here. Here's what happened. The ox gored and made him a treifa. Listen, gored him and made him a treifa. Now, what do we mean by the goring ox? It says, all right. It says here he said the Hamas. The Mishnah says Hamas he killed him, right? So just a treifa David like command the kodle the nafshe. So what happens is if he killed him, he made the chatzi a treifa, right? And it's if he killed him because the treifa is like dead. And umay yorish of nafshe, he means paying himself. He's his own yorish because it's like he's dead, but he's still alive. It's like yorish. This is a very, very difficult answer. Rambam says, I'll tell you, how's that going to work? If you say kedushin is not a kedushin, how do you have yorish? The answer must be yorish. No. He didn't really kill him. He almost killed him. Made him a treifa, mortally wounded him, so it's like he's dead. And therefore, he's chayiv the 30 shekels. And not the 30 shekels. He's chayiv $5 million because his value on the market is 10 million. So and who does he pay? Marashik means he paid himself. Rava says but this doesn't make sense. They give you two answers. Number one, it says Yorshiv, it's heirs. It doesn't say himself. Vod koferu. This is kofer. What does kofer mean? He pays ransom, meaning he pays for killing him. If a Jewish man by accident kills another Jewish man, what do? He has to pay his value in the market, right? That's what the court would do today too. Vod koferu. Kofer is not paid until it's true. When it comes to an ox goring a person to death, there and you have to pay the knas. There it says v'nokro, he gored him. Didn't say he died. Said he gored him. Even if he made him a treifa, he would also have to pay. But when it comes to kofer is only after death, and here's the guy's not literally dead. So therefore, you can't prove anything from over here. So then where's the yorshim? If the yorshim, we try to say if the kedushin is not a kedushin, how do you have yorshim? Must be that the kedushin is a kedushin, right? Then that's how he is yorshim from that lady. So the Gemara was first answer was no. Yorshim means himself. He was gored, and therefore he's Yorshim himself. This doesn't make sense. It means it's fit if he killed this guy. If the ox gored this guy, then the half that Kanasi paid to the master, to his half master. The guy owns half of them. The other half that goes to him, right? You owe him 5 million, but there's nobody to pay because he's dead and he has no Yorshim. So what do you do if you owe money to somebody and he dies and he has no Yorshim? You keep the money. You keep the 5 million, but there's nobody to pay. Okay, so that answers. So do we prove the question? If you, we had the question, if a chatzi marries a woman, is she married or not? We didn't really prove it, right? We didn't really prove it. You can't prove from the Yorshim. There are no Yorshim over here. Even though we said before that if he killed the ox gored and killed the chatzi, that half kanas goes to the master and the half kofar goes to the Yorshim. There are no Yorshim. So basically the guy keeps money himself. Amarava. Just like we said, if you're Makadosh a half a woman, not Makadosh, why? Because you left something over, you left the other half out. The only way Kedushin works is you marry a whole woman. Woman can only be designated for one man. So therefore, if you marry only half of her, you didn't marry her. So he says, so Rava says also, let's say you marry a woman who's half and half, it's also not Kedushin, because you can't marry half a woman. So over here, even though you didn't leave anything out because you can't marry the shifra part, a Jewish man cannot marry Kedusha's not chal on a shifra, because she on the half that's a shifra, she's a shifra knanis, Kedusha's not tofes. So over here also it doesn't work at all. That's what Rava said. Rava said also Darish Rabba Bar Rafuna said the same thing. Just like we said before. If a man tells a woman, I want you to be married to half of me, that works. That works. She's married to him. Not a problem with that. I said half. He means leave over. Maybe I'll take another wife too. But if he says, I'm married half of you, the woman, that doesn't work. The same way, if you marry a half a shifra and half a baschor, it also doesn't work. Rabbi Arfuna said the same thing. How could you compare the two? When a Jewish man goes over to a Jewish woman and say, I want to marry half of you, what happened to the other half? He should have married her the whole half. But over here, what happened? The man married her. Okay, can only be chal on the half that she's half Jewish and half slave. The Kedushin can only be on the half that she's Jewish. It doesn't work on the half that she's a slave. So he didn't leave anything out. So Rav Huna regretted what he said because he took Rav Chisda's point there, and he set up Amora. He set up an interpreter, person to explain his teaching, and he changed the line. But Darish, he said the pasuk says in Yeshaya, Rashi explains that this stumbling block will be before you. We're talking about after the Jewish people in Yerushalayim stopped learning and they didn't do too much, and they saw a guy who knew how to learn a little bit. They said, "Listen, you be our teacher." And this stumbling block, what do you mean? What it means stumbling block, meaning it's hidden. It's hidden like a shemechusin, things that are hidden like a garment that covers over you. That you're a baki. You teach us, and this they call like the Torah stumbling block. Things we don't understand will be under you. And what he darshans from that is that Torah could be a stumbling block. A person does not stand on his Torah, meaning he doesn't really learn properly. This is very true. What's the best time that you learn something? When somebody corrects you. You made a mistake and somebody asks you a question, corrects you. He says, yes, I said before that just like if a man marries a half a woman, it doesn't work. The same way, if a man marries a chatzi shiva, chatzi baschar, also this doesn't work. That's what I said before. I made a mistake. But Krista said it's not the same. When I marry a half a woman stam, I left out the other half. But when I married a half a woman, half a chatzi and a chatzi shiva, chatzi baschar, I married a chatzi. I married all I could. I married half of her. That's all I could. I didn't leave anything out. I wanted to marry all of her, but half of her was a slave. So afal pi she'amru. Now he changed his mind. I made a mistake. Afal pi she'amru makash chatzi she'en b'desh. Even though that's the halach in kedushin, if you marry a half a woman, it's not kedushin. Of a chatzi kedushin, it is a good kedushin. My time. Hasam Shiur b'kinyan. When a Jewish man married a half a Jewish woman, he left something out. Here he didn't leave anything out of the acquisition. Okay, so we have different Rav Sheshis. Rav Sheshis says no. Rav Sheshis says the same thing that Rav said originally and that Rav Arfuna said originally, that it doesn't work. He says it doesn't work. Wait a minute. Okay, so now we have different opinions. If you marry a Jewish man goes over and he says, Kadesh is lead to a woman who's half and half. Doesn't work or not. We have different opinions here. Machlokas. He says, Moshe says, when somebody whispers, you say, what do you mean? What's Eza Ish Shifcha Charuva? The pasuk says that if a man lives with a woman, Shifcha Zera, he Shifcha Nachrefesli, she's designated for a man. What does that mean? We had this before. Woman who was half slave, half Paschoret. Hamurasa Levet Ivri, who's engaged to Levet Ivri, right? A regular Jewish man cannot marry a Shifcha Charufa. Can't marry not supposed to marry her. We're clearing over here. If he marries her, is it a kedushin? But what do you mean? It says Hamurasa Levet Ivri. So Rav Sheshes says, right? Rav Sheshes said, also says, somebody will tell you that we talked about, the pasuk talks about a Shifcha Charufa who is a half a Shifcha and half a Baschored, who's engaged to an Eved Ivri. Alma Basas Rusi, he's engaged, that it works. And Morlo, no. Look at Rishmol. We had before Tanur Rishmol, and we had before the other day also about this. Shu Omer b'Shifcha Knasim Rasul Eved. It's not a Chatzi. It's talking about a Shifcha Knanis. Remember, an Eved Ivri who was sold by the court. He could Madonna V'Tein Lo Isha, right? You can give her a Shifcha Knanis, and he's an Eved Ivri. Normally, an Eved Ivri, a Jewish man, he's a full Jewish man, is not allowed to marry Shifcha Knanis, but if he's a slave, he's entitled to be with the Shifcha Knanis. So he shall be with that, the other never, all that Lashon. Shehu Omer b'Shifcha Knasim Rasul Eved Ivri. Talking about a Shifcha Knanis who's engaged to an Eved Ivri. Shifcha Knanis Basas Rusi. Shifcha Knanis can't really be engaged. The master can designate this woman to sleep with this guy. Okay, she's going to be your mate for the next few years, until 6 years. She's going to be your mate. But it's not really Erison. He's Jewish. It's not really Erison. It's not Vasusi. She's designated for him. In other words, even if you learn like we learn, not like Tanur Shmuel, like the general idea that a Shifcha Charufa means she's half free, like we said the other day. She was partially redeemed, and she hasn't been given her debt. So all that, so she's partially redeemed, she's half and half. It doesn't mean that she's engaged, it just means that she's Milchah for him. And therefore, did we prove this question? We didn't prove this question either. We have basically two different opinions. Can a man, Jewish man, goes over to a woman who's half and half, and he's with the Basu? Is she engaged or not? Different opinions over here. Omar of Chista. Okay, now we have this question. We don't really know if Kedushin works. Let's say this case happens. Reuben goes over and he gives her Kedushin, this half, and we just said right now. Then she was free. The half of her, she was half and half. Now she was free. The husband was Kashla Shimon. Now once she was free, Shimon was Makadosh her. Shimon didn't say he slept with her. Shimon, his brother, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, right? And she now got engaged to Shimon. And Reuben and Shimon brothers both died. No children. And there was another brother. What was his name? Levi, right? Monsieur Bemis Levi. She can make even to Levi, right? Why? Why is it even to Levi? Because she was married to one of them. Reuben or Shimon. Now, listen carefully. She was married to Reuben when she was Chatzi. Then she was free. And then after she was free, she was Mekudesh to Shimon. So Shimon's marriage is a good marriage, right? Wait a minute. If Reuben's marriage was a good marriage, if brother number one marries a woman, right? And he's still alive, and brother number two gives her Kedushin, does that mean anything? No, can't mean anything. He's started married to number one. Okay, let's say they both died, she can get married to Levi. Even ain't any korba HSA Mason. Let's say different case. Reuben, Shimon, and Levi. Listen to this regular case. Reuben dies. Shimon doesn't make Yibam, he does Mimer, remember? Like Kedushin. So partial, right? Now he dies. What happens? Allah is, Pasuk says, one of them dies, then a brother makes Yibam. If Misha here, this woman who is Reuben's wife, she has a Zika from Reuben, right? There's a connection because of Reuben. There's also a connection because of Shimon, because Shimon had performed Mimer on her. Didn't marry her, but he gave her Kedushin, a Kedushin Rabbanan. So we say over there that Levi does not make Yibam on her, gives Chalitza, because we dash in the Pasuk, only if she fell from one brother. Here she fell from two brothers, Reuben and Shimon, because Reuben died, and Shimon was about to marry her, gave her mimer, and then he died. So she fell really from two brothers, because Reuven's Zika was not gone because Shimon didn't really marry her, only married her partially. Therefore, we say over there that Levi doesn't make Yibam over there because it's Eisha Shnei Mesim. She's like the wife of two dead people. But over here in this case, where Reuben didn't marry a regular woman, Reuben married a Chatzi. Then she got her freedom, and then Shimon married her. So you know what? If they both died now and there's no children, Levi would make Yibam. Why? Manavshach. Kedushin, Reuben Kedushin. If you say Reuben's Kedushin is a Kedushin, why would you say that? You'd say that like Rabbi Barchana's changed opinion when he said, even though if a regular Jewish man marries a half a Jewish woman, that doesn't work. But if a Jewish man marries a Chatzi, it does work because he didn't leave anything out. He married all he could. So if that's the case, if Reuben's marriage was a good marriage, then Kedushin Shimon does not Kedushin at all, right? In fact, if he slept with her, it might be adultery. Be Kedushin is Shimon Kedushin, and if Shimon's Kedushin is a good Kedushin, and Kedushin Reuben is not Kedushin. In other words, she only fell to Levi from one brother. It's Manavshach, it's not two. Itmar. Okay, that's one. That question's pretty easy. Based on our suffix. In other words, we don't know what the halacha is, right? The Rambam is also a little bit cagey as to what the halacha is in this case. At the end of the day, if you marry a Chatzi, is it a marriage or not? It's a marriage, but it's not 100%, So Itmar. So based on that question, but either way, whatever the halacha is, Levi can certainly marry her if their brothers both die with no children. Itmar. Okay, the same thing we just had. Reuben married a Chatzi, and now she got her freedom. Now we're not talking about Shimon's a brother, just another guy. Let's say guy number one, guy number two. And then she got married to Shimon. The Kedushin of the first guy is gone, meaning once she was free, she's like a new person. And therefore, she's married really to number two. Because once she got her freedom, she's married to number two. Now, some say that it's the Nishachra. Some Farshim say that the Shichur itself causes her to be a new person now. She was a half and half. Now she got freed. She's like a new Jewish person, not a new Jewess. And therefore, she's like a new person. She's not married to Reuben anymore. Some say no, that the fact that Shimon married her, that took it away. But in any case, Nachman says, Pakuk Kedusha, Rav Zera says, no, Nachman, no. Gama Kedusha, just the opposite. He married this woman, right? Reuben gave her Kedushin. We're not really sure the Kedushin worked or not. That maybe it worked partially, right? Like you say, we're not sure. He married partially. Now she got her freedom. The Kedushin can be chal on her whole body. So now the Gomer Kedushin, the first Kedushin, is consummated totally. In other words, it's like if he married a Chatzi, it's like mittel tov v'koi. It's not 100% she's married because we don't know if she's married, if the Kedushin works or not. But once she's free, then the Kedushin takes place. Rav Zera says, it's likely, like me, I understand that Rabbi Yosef Bachama disagrees with me, but I'm likely to be correct. So it says, Lo yumsu ki lo chopasha. Again, in that case of the ish yishkav isha shechva zera shivcha nechrefes leish lo yumsu ki lo haftei lo neflasa or chufshel nikma lo yumsu. You have to bring a carbon asham. Lo yumsu ki lo chopasha. They will not die because she didn't really receive her freedom, so it wasn't really adultery. But if she would have been free, Yumsa, she would die. It's mashma that if he slept with this woman who's half and half, meaning she's designated to an Evet Ivri, right? And she's half and half. Again, not marriage. It's not marriage. That's necessarily chal. According to Sheshes and Rava, and the way Rabba of Huna said originally, it doesn't work, right? There's no real kedushin over there. So it says over there that lo yumsa even kilo chabasha. But if her freedom was granted to her, mashma, they would die because the kedushin would be chal. That's what it says. Amalei Abaya. What about according to Rav Shimshon, who said that it's not the pasuk not speaking about a half and half. It's talking about a total shipra kananis who's engaged to an Evet Ivri. We said engaged doesn't mean engaged; it means designated. If she gets her freedom, they're going to die, right? She was never really married to him. There was no kedushin there at all. If she's half and half, you can clear, like we said, as a machlokas, was there a kedushin or not? So you could say two ways. If she gets her freedom now, maybe the whole marriage is off because she's a new person. Or you could say, no, now that she got her freedom, the original kedushin that was given to half of her now spreads to her other half also. You can see that. But if you learn like Torah Shmuel, that she wasn't a half and half anyway. The shikha charufa means she was simply a regular shikha knanis, designated by the master to the Eved Ivri. So there was no marriage there at all. So you're going to say, and now also, if Chufsha Nitan La, they would die now. If was there adultery? There's no adultery now just because she got her freedom. She was never really married to the Eved Ivri. Again, they're going to die if she was granted her freedom. And now you slept with this woman. What are we talking about? We're talking about you slept with a woman who was designated for the Eved Ivri. The shaila is, was she half and half or was she full? If she was half and half, you can clear, is there a kedushin there, right? That's what we could talk about. So you say, if she was granted her freedom, so now she's really married, and now you would die if you slept with that woman, because it's real adultery. She's married to the Eved Ivri. But if you learn that she was only a shifra knanis, there was no kedushin at all. You can't say maybe it was a kedushin, maybe it wasn't. There was no kedushin at all. So just because she got her freedom and you slept with her now, would you die for adultery? It's not adultery. You're over on Nolia Kadesh. You shouldn't sleep with a shiksa or with a shifra knanis. But there's no adultery. Chayv misa. Shechufsha means what do you mean? What does it mean? You're darshaning. Lo yumsu ki lo chupasha. You're not going to die for adultery because she wasn't really freed. It doesn't mean that if she was freed right away, you're going to die if you commit adultery with her. It means if she was freed and then she got kedushin, then you would die if you slept with her. That would be adultery. So therefore, he answered. Abaye answered and defended Rabbi Yosef Bar Cham's opinion that the kedushin is totally gone when she gets her freedom. It was a story with a woman. It was a story like that. In other words, it was very common apparently that people had shifras, and maybe you had a partnership, and one guy freed and one guy didn't. So it was a story with the chatzi. The kafos Rabban, they forced her master to free her. Forced the master to free her. Right? Says the Gemara, Kaman Rav Yochanan Baroka. Does that mean he goes like Rav Meir? Rav Meir has a minority opinion in Yavamas who says, we know who has a mitzvah approval, only men. That's how we paskin, right? Women have a general idea of lo sobro, the Shevas Yatzra, fine, they have an obligation. How does that work? How can you have a mitzvah? How do you have a mitzvah that you have to do the mitzvah? If the women don't have a mitzvah, why do they have to partake? You have a mitzvah to have children, right? But let's say women don't want to marry men. What are you supposed to do? How can you're dependent on somebody else? The answer is Hashem put it in the genes of women that they have a motherly instinct. They want to have children, and therefore that's how Hashem made the world, right? Hashem can't force us to have children if there's no women to have children with, right? So there's a shiloh though. Generally, we hold that women don't have a mitzvah. Yachmarov says women also have a mitzvah. Oh, so why did they free? They said the rabbis forced the master to free her. Why? Because she has a mitzvah approval and she couldn't marry anybody either. This whole discussion that we're having is if an Eved Ivri or a Jewish man goes over and gives kedushin to a chatzi shivcha chazan, but certainly it's usher to do that because she's partially a shifcha. You're over in Lo Kadesh. You shouldn't do that. But if you did, it's chalud out. That's the shal that we had over here, right? But in any case, so he gave these different shiur. If he gave it, and then afterwards she was freed, and his brother married her, right? What would you say there? One's a marriage, one's not a marriage. So all these shilas come up, but why do they force her to free? We understand the Mishnah that said, what if a man is a half and half? The rabbi said, Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, and Beis Hillel agreed, free him because he can't get married. And he has a mitzvah approval. But a woman doesn't have a mitzvah approval. Are you going to say that they forced the master to free this woman because they held that she also has a mitzvah approval? Hashem said to both of them, both Adam and Chava, you also both have mitzvah approval. Is that what you want to say? No. The reason they forced them to slave is because they fooled around with her. In other words, they treated her like a zona. They treated her promiscuously. Everybody was promiscuous with this woman because since she wasn't designated to anybody, she wasn't a regular shifcha. There was no Eved Ivri to match her up with. She couldn't marry anybody, right? So if she couldn't marry anybody, she became a slut. And because of that, the rabbi said, no, free her. In this way, she can marry a Jewish woman and she'll be guarded by her husband. If you sell your Eved, you have an Eved.
No, we don't have an answer.
Pardon? To what?
Did they have half issue?
To half issue of her or him? Which one are you asking about? If he marries a half and half.
According to
the issue we've been discussing on Amud Aleph, we had a question. We had this question. A person who's half and half, and he marries Baschorin. Does that work or not? That wasn't decided. It wasn't decided. We couldn't prove it either way. We didn't even bring a proof, right? We brought a proof. We said, yeah, the question was, so we tried to prove it from from the fact that it says over at Yorshim, it's mashma. You could, but that doesn't mean literally Yorshim. It just means
prove that just from the Mishnah?
from the Mishnah what? That you can't.
Right.
No. So from the Mishnah, good question. So because even the Mishnah is telling you that if you have such a situation, it's improper for him to marry anybody. The question is, does it work? And our question is, does it work? It's certainly improper. Our question is, if he did it, well, he can't do that because she can't marry him. She's foster for that. She can't marry a person who's a slave. She can't marry him. But if he did marry her as the Kedushin Chal, that's our question over here. The same thing in the reverse. We're asking now if a Jewish man marries a Chatzi, does the Kedushin work or not? That's the shal that we had in different opinions that we had over here, whether it works or not, but certainly you shouldn't do it. In fact, Rashi says over here, that would there be Misa and Malchus? Take a look at Rashi, Gemurah Kedushi Rishon, Rashi about a third of the way down on our page over here, when Rav Zera said that if you married married Reuven, and then she got her freedom, what happened? So until now, if you slept with a woman who's half and half, that's Isha. That's a shifcha chalufa. She's half and half, right? And Malchus. What were the Malchus for? Presumably for Lo Yakadesh. You shouldn't sleep with you shouldn't commit adultery in this form. Not adultery of a married thing, but adultery of you're not supposed to be a zona or sleep with somebody you're not supposed to sleep with. In other words, that you're over on Lo Yakadesh. You sleep, if you don't get no marriage involved, you simply sleep with somebody you're not supposed to sleep with. Let's say you sleep with a mamzer, somebody you're not allowed to marry, or sleep with a sinner, somebody you're not, or a goy. So then the rule is that's in a Surf Kodesh. So that's what we're talking about over here. So certainly you're not allowed to lechachil, but if you did, that was our shayla here. Yeah.
According to that Itmar with the Paku Pagamu,
Yes.
But the language suggests in both of them that something indeed happens with the first kedusha. Paku means
right.
We get rid of it.
Okay, yeah.
It means something was there. And
right. So this could be according to. So that's the difference of opinion. That could very well be according to
both of them.
According to both of them, yeah. So they can go with the opinion.
Is
right. So that could be with the opinion, like Rabbi Arafun, who changed his opinion, said that it is chal. And that's the shayla. From the Rambam, it's mashma that it's chal, but you get into problems. Yeah, correct. At the end of the day, when Rabbi Arafun corrected his opinion, said I made a mistake. There is a difference. If you married a half a woman, if a Jewish man marries a half a woman, that doesn't work because you got to marry a whole woman. She can't be with somebody else. But over here, you married all you could. So maybe it's chal. Certainly, it's not mutter. But would it be chal? That's the question. Let's say you have a kanani to a guy. Now that's a bad thing. You know why? Because till now he could do mitzvahs. Now he's going to be under the dominion of the guy. He's not going to do mitzvahs. So you're a bad boy. Or you sell him to a Jew in Chutz La'aretz, where also he's going to be of less mitzvahs now. Yatz ben Chor, he goes up free. He goes up free, meaning that's the Takon of Chachamim. They made a knas. And now what does it mean? He goes out free. He works for the Abu Kachavim. The first case is you sell him to Abu Kachavim. So Rashi says if he escaped from the guy, he's free. He can't come back to you. He's free. Once you sell him, the rabbis made a knas and they said you have to give him a get. And that's it. Or if you sell him to a Jew in Chutz La'aretz, also because he's in Chutz La'aretz, you have to give him a get. We'll see who gives him a get. So here, the Bryce explains. You sold him to the guy. What did the guy do? What do you mean, sold the guy? He's under the guy's reshus now, right? But if he escapes, you can't take him back. He can't come back to you. You have to give him a get. That's only if you didn't already give him a document. If you already gave him a document, that's good enough. Mine was on him. The cost of lahachi. I sold him to a guy, and I said, by the way, if you escape here, I'll write it down to you. I'm selling to a guy. You sold me to a guy. I will be able to do mitzvah. Can I tell you what? If you escape from him, I got no business with you. You don't have to come back to me. That's like a get shechur. Okay. So that's the idea. Is if you sell him to a guy, you have to give him a get. In other words, you give him a knas, you can't take him back. You can't take him. He escapes you and comes back. He escapes and comes back. You can't take him back. You have to either give him a get now or you gave him a get originally. Let's say borrowed money from a guy. Okay, you need a guy. The guy says, "You got collateral? Yeah, I got an evet. If I don't pay it back, come and take the evet." Right? Once the guy made him nemuso, we don't know what that word means yet. Nemuso. Once he made him nemuso, goes out free. My nemuso. What does nemuso mean? Amrapuna Bayuda Nashki made him a collar. In other words, when does he go out free? If you borrow money from a guy and you used your evet as collateral, if the guy put his collar on the, they used to they would put a collar on the a seal of some sort of I'm showing that he owes me. It's like it's like what do they do? That's like branding a cow or something. So once the guy does that, he goes out free. That's the love of maybe I gave him collateral just because I can collateral, but I want to keep my evet. I'll pay him back. No, once the guy took him and put his collar on him, then he goes out free. So, but that's assuming that nimusa really means a collar or a seal. I'll show you that doesn't mean that. Or a reason. A reason is a sharecropper. A sharecropper means a guy who works the land, and he takes 25%, 30%, 50%, whatever they deal with. The chakiros is that you lease the land for X amount of bushels of produce per year. Or long-term arisas that they've been arisim of goyim for many, many years. In all these cases, you're an oris or a choker or arisas of goyim, the land belongs to the guy, or another chavim who gave his field as a mashkon for Yisrael, but it still belongs to all these cases. It's the guy's land. Even though he made him nimuso, again, we're going to say nimuso. In other words, this goes with the Shita Rashi says at the first of the wide lines that he holds that an Obik if a guy owns land in Eretz Yisrael, you don't have to give Trumas Maisus, even though you're working the land for the guy, but it's Goyish land. So if you're a sharecropper or you're leasing the land or whatever, or the guy gave you the land as a mashkan tzadeu, even though he made nemuso, ptura minamasi, patra ma'aser. Now, what does it mean? If you say that nemuso means a collar, like you said in the case of the evet, if you gave the evet as collateral, sada basnashki, a field doesn't have a collar or a seal, so it doesn't. So nemuso can't mean that. Omer of Sheish is zman. Nemusa means zman. I put a date on it. So what does that mean? I put a date on it. Kasha's man. It doesn't make sense. You said so. What by a guy in the first of the widest lines, Rashi. Kasha's man the gabe evet chashav l'mechira. By a evet, you said, listen, if I sold the evet to a guy, and he goes, and rather, if I borrowed money from a guy, and I gave my evet as a collateral, if I put a date on it. If I put a date, if I don't pay back by such and such a date, you get you'll take the collateral, then it's considered a sale, right? Because you say, once you put a date on it, he goes out free. But over here by the Sada, if the guy said, I'll give you my land as a collateral, put a date on it, it's not considered a sale because you're still part of from Meiser. The land belongs to the guy, so there's no Meiser there. So if you're learning that it's a Zman, so then there's a stira. Does man make it a sale or not make it a sale? By the ever we say it is a sale. By the field it's not a sale. Kasha's man is not slow kasha. By the ever we're talking about where this man came. If what happened, I borrowed money from the guy and I said if I don't pay back by a certain date, you take him, then it's yours. So then this man came, fine. But in the case of the field, this man hadn't come yet. Well, once this man came, if I said, if this man comes and I don't pay you back, you take the evet, obviously the evet belongs to him then. So what's the chiddush in that? Because I've given him to the guy. Obviously, if this man came again, really in both cases, this man hasn't come yet. I just said this man. I said, if I don't pay you back by X and not by X date, by that date, it will be yours. And I didn't. The date did not come yet. And by the field, the same thing. The guy said, if I don't pay you back by a certain date, the field will belong to you. The date hasn't come yet. But the difference is, by the eved, in the case of the eved, I'm giving you the body. I'm giving you himself. That's considered a sale. In the case of the field, it's only for the payros. If I don't pay you back by excellent fate, you can take the payros of this field. That's what you mean over here. You didn't really get the field, and that's the difference between them. So by an evidence, a sale. By the side, it's not a sale. I'll give you an answer. And what he said was this: I'll give you, if I don't pay you back, I'll give you this as a mashkan, but he didn't actually give it to him as a mashkan. Says Rashi, the top Rashi. I'll menas on the condition. If I don't pay you, it's man ploni. Bo mashke, you can come and take this klad mikarkazu. B'teishacha. Barik tani tur manamaiser calls man shaloba Yisrael. He didn't come and take it. The afik of the matas manai, even though the man has come. In other words, it could be that as long as this man hasn't come, it's the chesed. V'ma Yisrael no till chelik prepares tur manamaiser. Like Abai Eviki I gavna. But over here, an evidence in this came, the time has come. I got the consura bone Yisrael. Even though he didn't take it, a dying be'evitzeh consu hold over mano below para. That's what it means over here. Or you could say this man has come in both cases. The chiddush is though that since this man came, even though the Avikom hasn't taken him yet, it's like a mechira, and the rabbis gave him a knas, and he goes out free. But and by the case of the sada of the goy, who gave him this man has come, but he said, when this man comes, if I don't pay you back, you come and take the mashkan, and he hasn't taken it yet. The matazam they have a becheskes and therefore you part it from us. So the second answer, you boys saying that this man has come in both. The chiddush is that this man has come, but nobody's taken possession of the mashkan yet. So by the Eved, the rabbis gave him a knas anyway, because he put his man in there and he effectively sold it to the guy. Guy hasn't taken possession yet. Still, if he hasn't taken possession yet, goes out free because you still effectively sold him to the guy. In the case of the Sada, since he hasn't taken possession yet, the payer is supported from Meiser. All right, we'll pick up Ton Rabbana tomorrow.
Doesn't this have to come onto the first teretz that he sold the body?
Yeah, in the first
teretz has to come onto the first teretz, because the only way you could sell this, the second teretz would be a knas if you sold the body. The chiluk is on the second.
Yeah, but according to the first answer, it says that he sold the body in the field. He only sold the Paris.
Right.
The second answer, you could say he sold the field. He sold it's the same thing. That's the goof of the evet and the goof of the karka. But the difference is that we're talking about a case where he hasn't taken possession of it yet. So by the field, since he hasn't taken possession of it, it's still the goyish field. And therefore, you put it from Meiser. By the evet, even though the goy hasn't taken possession of it yet, but it's still considered a sale, and the rabbis gave him the knas. All right, we'll pick it up tomorrow. Have a good day.
Good.
Even though he wrote a time in the star, even though he doesn't come and
take it,
doesn't automatically go over?
No. You have to take possession.